All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Could begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Should to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul. Sherry and Sarah Wolansky for dedicating all the Shuman Drashos this month in the Schus of Refuah Shalema. For Zechariah Dov Ben Perel Shira, the Tilson and Wall families of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this month in honor of the Simchas of our children over this past summer, and with best wishes of Mazel Tov and Shana Tova to all. To thank Shani and Avram Kelman for dedicating all the Shiurim and Drashos this month in memory of their beloved parents, and in the schus of all those who need a refuah shalema. Incredible. But with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Yud Zayin 17. We are picking up Emiras Hashem on Tes Zayin Amud Beis 16b. And we left off Bishlama, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 lines up from the bottom. So if you remember again, at the end of yesterday's daf, we were talking about the concept of Hanukkah, and specifically who it is that receives the Hanukkah. Who receives, right? Remember again, Hanukkah representing, we'll call it that compensation/startup capital upon emancipation. Who receives it? So the Gemara quoted a Brisa, and the Brisa said that for Eved Ivri he gets it himself. For Amo Ivriya, it goes to her father. It goes to her father. So the Gemara says as follows: Bishlama anak Amo Ivriya liatzma. Suppose I say the Gemara says, and then the Gemara ended up with saying, in a case where the father is not alive, ultimately it goes to the Amo Ivriya herself. So the Gemara says that makes sense. Bishlama anak Amo Ivriya liatzma. I understand why the Brisa needs to teach me that the Hanukkah of the Amma Ivriya goes to her. Why? He says, the Gemara says, this comes to exclude a case where, let's say her father dies, but her brothers are alive. So one might have thought that ultimately, again, maybe the Hanukkah goes to her brothers. Pasuk says, by talking about Eved Kinani, by Eved Kanani, when a father dies, that Eved Kanani becomes the possession of the children. The Gemara says, ultimately, again, it goes to your sons, but not to your daughters. So what you see over here is, it's Dafkan Eved Kanani, who when a father dies is inherited by his sons. But when a father dies, the rights he has in his daughter are not inherited by the sons. That's why again the Brisa would say that for Hanukkah, if the father is dead, the Hanukkah goes to the Amma Ivriya herself. However, the Gemara says, Ela anak Eved Ivri liatzma pshita. But why does the Brisa need to teach me that the Hanukkah of an Eved Ivri goes to the Eved Ivri? That's obvious. To which the Gemara says, El Laman, if it doesn't go to the Eved Ivri, who would it go to? Rabbi Yosef, Yud Kras Kachazina Hacha. Rabbi Yosef, this is a great expression. Yud Kras means Yud is the smallest letter. What the Tana has done is he's taken the smallest letter and Kras made it into a big city. So Rabbi Yosef, so apparently the expression of making a mountain out of a molehill, like everything else good in life, comes from us, right? So again, this expression, Yud Kras Kachazina Haka, I see a small Yud made into a large city, the Tana has done here. In other words, you're right. The Tana did not need to write anything that the Hanukkah of an Eved Ivri goes to the Eved Ivri. Why doesn't the Tana need to write it? It's obvious. It's understood. It does not need to be articulated. And now that the Tana did articulate it, it makes it into a whole big issue of us trying to figure out what it is that he's trying to express, when he's not really trying to express anything unique over here. Incredible. Abai Amar Hachem Rosh Sheshes. Abai said, this is what Rosh Sheshes meant to say. Hamani, Tutai, whose opinion is this? Tutai, it's the name of a person. Tisanya, Tutai Omer. Lo v'lo lebal chovo. No. We'll say the Brisa is coming to teach me something. What is the Brisa coming to teach me? We've actually seen this before. That the Hanukkah of an Eved Ivri ultimately again goes to the Eved Ivri and not to his creditor. We'll say, what does this mean? If you remember again, we mentioned this before. This was the position of Rabbi Yossi. Remember again, what did Rabbi Yossi say? If A lent B money and B lent C money, A has the ability to collect from C. So you might have thought that ultimately again, if the Eved Ivri owes someone money, so perhaps again the creditor could go right to the master and collect the Hanukkah from the master. Kamash Malon, no. Kamashla, no one is entitled to seize the hanaka of the Eved Ivri. It belongs to him. Incredible. So let's analyze Gufa. Elu ma'anikim lahem. Both say these are the people entitled to hanaka. Who are they? Number one, hayotzi b'shanim, one who goes out after 6 years of servitude. Next, Ubi Yovel, one who goes out at Yovel, or Misas Adam, or ultimately again one who goes out with the death of the master. The Amo Ivriya B'Simanan, Amo Ivriya goes out again once she exhibits signs of physical maturation, and upon emancipation she receives Hanaka. So we'll say these are four categories. We'll call it four emancipatory categories who receive Hanaka. Now we'll say, and I remember again, whenever you have a number, numbers come to include. What else do numbers do? They exclude. So what does this come to exclude? Aval. This is fascinating. Boreach. We'll say, what happens if an Eved runs away? The Eved runs away, as just in case. Eved runs away, right? Sends his master, a postcard from the Caymans, saying, by the way, everything is good over here. Why don't you wire that Hanaka to my offshore account? Right? So no, there's no Hanaka. There's no Hanaka if the Eved runs away. Vayotzi b'giron kesef, eimanikilo. Or we'll say, interestingly enough, an Eved who buys himself out of emancipation, Giron Kes, remember again, there's always a mechanism for a buyout. Remember, what's the mechanism for the buyout? Purchase price divided by number of years. That represents the yearly amount. Subtract number of years worked or amount of time, you can prorate it also through months. Amount of time worked, that amount is the buyout amount. So the Brisa says if the Eved either goes ahead and runs away or buys himself out, ultimately, again, under those circumstances, there is no hanaka. Right? Meir says, no. Boreach in manikelo. Right? Meir disagrees. Meir, this well says the Tanakama. So Tanakama says four categories get hanaka. If you run away or if you buy yourself out, no hanaka. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Meir Omer, Boreach in manikelo. V'yotze b'giron kesa manikelo. Rabbi Meir says, I agree with you with the four, but I also agree with you that an Eved who runs away doesn't get hanaka, but an Eved who buys himself out does get Hanaka. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon says, Arba manikin lahem, shlosha be'ish v'gimel be'isha. Rabbi Shimon says, there's a total of 4 people who get Hanaka. 3 of them apply to a man. 3 apply to a man, 3 apply to a woman, but there's no 4 categories that apply to either a man or a woman. Why? The Gemara says, Arba be'echa man, lefi she'ein simanin be'ish, Uritzia Biisha. That's because remember again, the case of Yovel, when does an Eved remain until Yovel? When his ear is pierced. Well, the ear piercing is dafka thing by an Eved, it does not apply by an Amma. Simanim only apply to an Amma, don't apply to an Eved. So Rabbi Shimon is coming along and saying there are 4 categories, but at most 3 of those categories only apply to either a man or a woman. Okay, so from where do we know all of this? Let's go through this. Let's go through this list. So you might have thought the only person who gets Hanaka is an Eved who leaves after 6 years. How do you know that an Eved, ultimately again, who goes out by Yovel, an Eved who goes out with the death of his master, and an Amma Ivriya with Simonin, with signs of physical maturation, how do you know that all of them get Hanaka as well? Talmud Lomar, Tishalachenu. The pasuk says, when the master sends the Eved away, there's an obligation to give him Hanaka. So v'chis Tishalachenu. So we'll say, so remember again, so essentially what the Gemara is saying is like this. The lashon of Tishalachenu means whenever the master is sending the servant away, the servant is entitled to Hanaka. What are the categories where the master is sending the servant away? 6 years, Yovel, death of the master, and Simonim. The Gemara says, "V'chisa shalachenu yachol shani marbe boreach v'yotze b'giron kesef." I said, Tanakama says, maybe you should include in this. The case of the Eved who runs away, and the case of the Eved who buys himself out. Talmud Lomar, v'chisa shalachenu chavshei mi'imach. The pasuk says, when does the master have to give Hanaka? When the master is sending the Eved away from himself. Mi sheshilucho me'imach. The only time the master is obligated to pay Hanaka is when the master is sending the Eved away from him. Yotza boreach v'yotze b'giron kesef she'en shilucho be'imach. So Tanakama holds, this comes to exclude which case? To exclude, number one, the Eved who runs away. Because if the Eved is running away, then what Rabbi say? The master is not sending him away. And when the Evet buys himself out, the master is also not sending him away. Therefore, according to the Tanna Kama, there are 4 cases in which you have to pay ha'anaka. Number 1, leaving after 6 years. Number 2, leaving after by Yovel, which is the case of the piercing. Number 3, the death of the master, because that's also called the master sending him away. And number 4, simanim. Simanim, signs of physical maturation by an Amma Ivriya. But if the Eved runs away, or if the Eved buys himself out, that's not called the master sending the Eved away. Therefore, no ha'anaka. That's the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Meir says, good. Rabbi Meir says, Boreach in ma'anikelo. If the Eved runs away, there's no ha'anaka. Why? De'in shilucha me'imach. Because at the end of the day, that's not called the master sending him away. However, Aval yotzi begira on kesef shishilucha me'imach. But I will say, but interestingly enough, if the servant buys himself out, that is called the master sending him away. Why? Because remember, what does the master have to do? The master has to accept the money. The fact that the master accepts the money from the Eved is effectively the master sending him away. Therefore, there is hanaka. Boreach hashlamabai. So we'll say, so again, so the Rabbi Meir essentially agrees with the Tanna Kama, disagrees with one case, Gira'on Kesef. When the Eved buys himself out, according to the Tanna Kama, there's no ha'anaka, because Tanna Kama says that's not the master sending him away. Rabbi Meir says, yes it is. Yes, it is, because the master has to accept the money from the Eved, so it is the master sending the Eved away. Now I will say, but they both agree in the case of the Eved running away, there's no ha'anaka. By the way, the Gemara says, just know, when an Eved runs away, Boreach hashlamabai. When an Eved runs away, he is obligated to make up the time to his master. Desanya, minayim leborech shachayv lahashlim. How do we know ultimately again that if an Eved runs away, he is obligated to make up the lost time to his master? Talmud lomar sheish shanim ya'avod. The pasuk says you got to work 6 years. Got to work 6 years. So if you run away and are derelict for some of those years, you must make them up again. Top of Yud Zayin, Yachala Filu Chala 17a. What we'll say is interesting case. What happens if Halacha Lamaisa, the Eved gets sick? What happens if, as a result of getting sick, he doesn't run away, but Lamaisa again? But Lamaisa, he's unable to work because he is ill. So the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar ubeshvias yetze. No. If he's sick, again, that's not his fault. That's extenuating circumstances. He goes free. He goes free on the 7th year, regardless. Rav Sheshes, what's the case over here? Hachama Askinon. Shabbos says, so this is interesting. So now, let's take a step back for just a moment. Now that we're saying is, if you're an Eved, right, and you run away, you have to make up your lost time. So what's the Havamina to say that if an Eved ran away, he would be entitled to Anaka? In other words, why would we ever think that he'd be entitled to anything? So this is fascinating. Look what Rav Shesha says. Hakma askinon kigon shebarach upaga bo yovel. Wow. Listen to how fascinating this is. We'll say, what happens if an Eved ran away, and a little bit of time after he ran away, it's Yovel. It's Yovel. Then I both say, what does Yovel do? What does Yovel do? Yovel emancipates everyone no matter what. So let's take a step back for just a moment. We have 2 halachas. Halacha number 1 is that if you're an Eved Ivri and you run away, you have to make up lost time to your master. Halacha number 2 is when Yovel comes, there's no more makeup. Right, when Yovel comes, everyone is emancipated. So what are we talking about over here? An Eved ran away, and then it was Yovel. So I might have thought, Ma'udetema, Hova apikle Yovel, Shilucho Meimach, Karinan Bey. Since when Yovel comes, everyone is automatically emancipated. I might have thought that's called Kisa Shalachanu. That's called the master sending away the Eved, and perhaps the Eved should be entitled. Velo niknise b'nanikle. Don't knas him, don't penalize him. Give him hanaka. Kamash malon, no. Kamash and I will say that if you're an Eved who runs away, Lamaisa, even if Yovel comes soon after and you are fully emancipated, no hanaka. No hanaka. Amar Mar, so we'll say, just to finish this up, Amar Mar Yachala Filu Chala. So we'll say, so remember again, I might have thought that even if the Eved becomes sick, he's obligated to make up lost time. Tamalom Rashias Yetze. Pasuk says in the 7th year he goes free. Afilu Chala Kol Sheish. That's very interesting. If you have an Eved, Rabbi say, who was sick all 6 years, sick all 6 years, so you might have thought he has to make up his time. Kamash, well, no, he goes free. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, chalash shalosh va'avad shalosh enu chayv lahashlim. But the brisa says if you have an Eved who was sick for 3 years, worked for 3 years, he doesn't have to make up lost time. So we'll say, Chala kol sheish chayv lahashlim. But if he was sick the entire 6 years, he absolutely does have to make up lost time. So which one is it? Amar Rav Sheshes ba'osa ma'aseh machat. Now I will say, what's the case? You could have an Eved, I will say, who halacha l'maisa is too sick for manual labor, but is able to do ma'aseh machat. Literally means like sewing, right? He's able to work with a needle and thread. Okay, so he can't do the manual labor of that an Eved would normally be expected to do. But l'maisa, again, he's able to do some type of work. So I will say, in that type of situation, even if he was sick all 6 years, if he was able to do something, he need not make up the time lost. If he was unable to do anything, then einachinami, he would have to make up that time. But it says in Gemara Gufakash, it's an inherent contradiction. Amrit chalash shalosh va'avad shalosh in chayv lahashlim. You said before that if the Eved is sick for 3 years and he worked for 3 years, he doesn't have to make up lost time, which sounds like as long as he could work up to half of his tenure and he was sick the rest of it, he need not make up lost time. Ha'arba chayv lahashlim. Sounds like over here, if he was sick for 4 years, he would be obligated to make up the time. But yet, Ema Seifa, look at the Seifa. Chala kol sheish chayv lahashlim. Seifa says if he was sick all 6 years, he's obligated to make up the time. Hadalid ein chayv lahashlim. You can infer from that if halacha l'maaseh is only sick for 4 years, he wouldn't have to make up time. So which one is it? Hachi Amar. This is what it means to say. Chala dalid. We'll say if you have an Eved who is sick for 4 years, Naaseh kimisha chala kol sheish v'chayv lahashlim. So we'll say this is interesting. So apparently, if you're an Eved Ivri, you get to be sick for up to half of your tenure without the need to make up the time. But the moment you are sick for more than half of your tenure, you have to. Then that's tantamount to being sick for the entire tenure, and you have to make up lost time. But when we talk about making up lost time, what does that mean? That means if you're so sick that what? You couldn't do anything. But if you were able to do something, some type of labor, even if it wasn't the labor for which the master bought you for, but you were able to do some type of labor, then einachinami, that's not called lost time, and you wouldn't be obligated to go ahead and make it up. So I will say, so a lot of halachas like converging over here. A lot of halachos converging as one. So I will say, so the other piece to this, so now we encounter this concept. So first of all, let's take a step back. So what we started with today, ultimately, and we're going to talk about this more, is who is entitled to hanaka. See, here's what everyone agrees with. Let's go with what everyone agrees with. Number one, leaving after 6 years. Number 2, leaving after Yovel, which essentially is which case? That's the piercing case, right? Because the only way you're there until Yovel is if you got your ear pierced. Number 3, the master dies, right? Number four, simanim, signs of physical maturation by an ama ivriya. The other case, the case that everyone agrees you don't get ha'anaka is when? Running away. Boreach. The machlokes case, ultimately again will be, the machlokes case is giraon kesef, when you buy yourself out of servitude. That Tanakama says no hanaka. Rabbi Meir says yes hanaka. Okay, so that's our outstanding issue. But so what we also learn is that Allah might say if you run away, you're obligated to go ahead and make up lost time. You're obligated to make up lost time. Right? How much time do you have to make up? So again, I will say, it appears that if you're sick for up to 3 years, you need not make up your lost time. More than 3 years, you have to make up lost time. But Allah, if you're able to do some work, you don't have to make up any time. I will say, there's an incredible Moser Haskell in this, right? That phrase that the Gemara says of Boreach Hashlama Boi. If you run away, you always have to make up lost time. I will say, if you think about it to a certain degree, herein lies the ultimate power of Chodesh Elul. I will say, whether we recognize it or not, so often throughout life, we are running away from our responsibilities. There are things we have to do, there are things we have to accomplish, there are things we have to change. But we run. We run, and people run in different ways. Right? Sometimes we run just simply by losing ourselves in other things, so I don't have to think about the realities at hand. Sometimes we run just by actively engaging in deleterious and negative behaviors, which ultimately go ahead and undermine our ability to accomplish. Rabbi say we don't recognize how much of our lives we spend running. We spend running from the things we have to do, the things we have to accomplish, the people we have to become. What does the Gemara say? You can run as much as you want, but boreach hashlama boy. You can run, but no matter how long you run for, I always have to make up whatever time I lost. However, how much time I run, I always have to go ahead and make up whatever it is that has been lost out on. And I will say that is the power of Chodesh Elul. Sfarim bring down that in this month, one could go ahead and make up for an entire year. The power of this month is whatever I didn't accomplish over the course of the year, the things I committed to do, the things I committed to change. For whatever the reason, I didn't get around to it. I was running away from it. Boreach hashlama boy. When you run, you have to make up lost time. And Chodesh Elul is our opportunity to stop running and to start making up. Such an incredible yisod. Let's go back to Tanah Rabbanan. So we'll say, so now, it's actually a very exciting daf. The truth is, there's a lot of details here, but all of it is quite fascinating, and it actually comes together beautifully to form a complete construct of Avdus. So we'll say, so now that we mentioned Hanukkah, the Gemara is going to get into the details of this. We'll say, how much Hanukkah do you have to give an Eved? How much Hanukkah do you have to give him? So the Gemara says, Chamish Slam Mikol Min Umin, Shein Chamisha Asrei Slam Divrei Meir. So Rabbi Meir says, you have to give him a total of 15 slaim, but those 15 slaim are equally distributed. I will say, the Torah, when speaking about Hanukkah, tells the master you have to give him mitzoncha from your sheep, migarncha from your threshing floor, umiyikvecha, and from your wine press. So Rabbi Meir says you literally have to give the Eved 5 slaim of sheep, 5 slaim of grain, 5 slaim of wine. That's what you have to give him. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, shloshim kishloshim shal Eved. You have to give him 30 slaim. Where I say, where does 30 slaim come from? So I say, interestingly enough, 30 slaim comes from if an ox gores and kills an Eved, a shor muad, a warned ox, gores and killed an Eved, the owner of the ox has to pay the owner of the Eved 30 slaim. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, how much is Hanukkah? It's a dollar amount or a sell amount, 30 slaim. Rabbi Shimon says, no, chamishim, 15 slaim, ki chamishin shebe erchin. We know that there's a concept of erchin, right? And erech va means a person says, erki alai, I hereby pledge my value, ultimately to the Beis HaMikdash. There are objective categories that the Torah establishes for erchin. The highest level of erchin is for a man between the ages of 20 and 60. That is a value of 50 slaim. So Rabbi Shimon says the amount of Hanukkah is 50 slaim. Okay, so what I say, so now we have to go through each of these opinions. So Amar, Chamish Slam Mikol Minumin, Shem Chamesh Slam Derei Meir. So Rabbi Meir says, what's Hanukkah? 5 slaim, 5 selah from each category. So 5 selah of sheep, 5 selah of grain, 5 selah of wine. So the Gemara said, Rabbi Meir, both say, does Rabbi Meir have to give us, right? Rabbi Meir is giving us a math lesson. I know that if there are 5 slaim from each category, that's a total of 15. Why does he need to spell that out? To which the Gemara says, Hakamash Malon, Miftsar Hudalo, Miftsar Lemihai Minyana. I will say what we learned from here is that halacha lemaisa, you can't give less than this. You cannot give less than 15 slaim as Hanukkah. The batzar le michad mina, the tafi le mechad mina, less lanba. Shabbos is interesting. What Rameir is coming to teach is like this. What you have to give is a total of 15 slaim of Hanukkah, and Hanukkah has to come from these 3 categories. Where do you have flexibility? How much of each category you want to give. So let's say you want to give a little more wine, a little less sheep, a little more grain. That's up to you. We don't care about that. What we care about is that you're giving from each of the 3 categories, and what we care about is that your sum total of Hanukkah is 15 slaim. That is your obligation. That is your obligation. Good. So let's say my type of Rameir. Where does Rameir get this from? Here we go. Yalif Rekam mi Bachar. So let's say he learns this at the Gzeir Shav. It says Rekam by Eved Kenan, by Eved Ivri. It also says Rekam by Pidyon Aben. So the Gemara said Ma'ala Halon Chamish Slam. Just like the amount of money by Pidyon Aben is 5 Slam. Afkan Chamish Slam. So to over here, So it's Gzer Shava, Rekam, 5 slime by Pidyon Haben. That's the amount you need for Pidyon Haben. 5 slime, therefore, by Ha'anaka. I v'ch'ima chamish slime kulhu. To which the Gemara says, well, maybe it's 5 slime in total. In total, 5 slime in total, and you make it up from sheep, grain, and wine. Iksiv Rekam Abasav Kidika Amrit. We'll say, if it would have said the word Rekam, don't send them out empty-handed at the end, I would have agreed with you. Hashta. Now that it says Rekam at the beginning, before everything else, Shadi Rekam Ason, Rekam Agoren, Rekam Ayakev. Ultimately, again, the word Rekam goes on each of the categories and tells the master, do not send them out empty-handed from the sheep. Do not send them out empty-handed from the grain. Do not send them empty-handed out from the wine. And the word Rekam connects us ultimately again to Pidyon Haben. Just like Pidyon Haben is 5 slime, so to the Rekam is 5 slime from each category. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Ve'ema, v'neilef rekam olas riyah. We'll say make a gzir shava rekam. Ultimately, again from olas riyah. Olas riyah is when you go up to the Beis Hamikdash for the Yom Tovim, for the Regalim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, you have to bring what's called an olas riyah, special carbon. Ola totally goes from the mizbeach riyah for seeing the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi points out the value of the olas riyah has to be a minimum of 2 ma'ah, which is a much smaller amount. So say rekam, you only have to give him 2 ma'ah. The pasuk says that the hanaka is supposed to reflect the bounty that you have. And therefore, again, I will say when establishing the Gzera Shava, we're going to establish the Gzera Shava with a higher amount, not with a lower amount. So I will say, this is the position of Rabbi Meir, that Allah Chalamaisa hanaka comes from 5 slaim from all 3 categories. Soncha, Garncha, Yikvecha, 5 slime from each category based on the Gzer Shava of Rekam, from Ha'anaka to Pidyon Haben. But I will say, but the flexibility you do have is it has to be a total of 15 slime, but if you want to give a little more, a little less from each category, that's fine. Next opinion, Rabbi Huda Omer Shloshim Kishloshim Shal Abed. Rabbi Huda says, no, you have to give, Ha'anaka is 30 slaim, the amount that an Eved gets, or the amount that is the master gets, if the Eved is gored by an ox. So the Gemara says, "My time, where does this come from?" Yolef nesina me Eved. He makes a gzer shav of nesina. Ma lahalon shloshim. Just like over there when it talks about the Eved getting gored and killed by an ox, the master of the Eved gets 30 slime. Afkan shloshim. So to over here when the Torah uses lashon of nesina, it means 30 slime. I v'neilif nesina me erchen. But we'll say, I want to make a gzir shav of nesina from erchen, and say just like erchen is 50 slime, so too over here it will be 50 slime. Ma'alalan chamishim afkan chamishim. Chada. So the Gemara says 2 reasons. Number 1, tafasta meruba lo tafasta. We'll say in general in halacha, when you have a choice between comparing something to a larger amount or a smaller amount, you always go with the smaller amount. Why? Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. When you try to hold on to a lot, you often don't get anything. On the other hand, tafasta muat tafasta. Hold on to a little, and you'll be able to acquire it. Va'od. Eved me Eved Havilei Lemelef. I will say ultimately, again, furthermore, it is better to learn out one halacha of Eved from another halacha of Eved. I will say we'll come back to that tafas mulo tafas in just a moment. So I will say, so that's the position of Rabbi Huda. So Rabbi Huda therefore says, halacha lemaisa hanaka, 30 slaim, learned out gzer shava nesina to Eved. Next, Rabbi Shimon says, chamishim ke chamishim sheva erchin. Rabbi Shimon says ultimately again, you pay hanaka is 50 slaim, like the amount of erchen, the highest eye of erchen. So my time, Rabbi Shimon, what's Rabbi Shimon's logic? Gomer nesina me erchen, gzer shav nesina from erchen, ma lahalon chamishim, just like erchen is 50 sela, afkan chamishim. So to hanaka is going to be 50 sela as well. Ve'ema bepachos shebe erchen. You will say, why do you go ahead and compare an Eved to the highest category of erchen? Why not go ahead and compare him ultimately again to the smallest, to the lowest level of erchen? In other words, the most inexpensive category, which would be a baby. So the Gemara says, because we'll say once again, so Hanukkah is supposed to represent bounty. right? You're supposed to give the evet from that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed you. Therefore, it should be a larger amount. Why not learn out Gzir Shava of Nesina like Rabbi Huda did and make it 30? So the Gemara says, Ma lahalon shloshim av kan shloshim. Furthermore, Chada tetafasta meruba lo tafasta va'od Eved me Eved Haved Lemeilov. So when I was asking Rabbi Shimon, again, it makes so much more sense like Rabbi Huda. Number one, tafasta lo tafasta. Number two, why not compare one case of Eved to another case of Eved? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon micha gamar. So I'll say, interesting enough, Rabbi Shimon has another gzera shava of micha. So I'll say, by Eved it says kiyamuch, and by Erchin it says mach. So micha, lashon of micha means impoverished. See, you find that same lashon of mach by an Eved, and same lashon of mach by Erchin. Therefore, Rabbi Shimon makes the Gzer Shava from Avdus to Erchin, and says, just like by Erchin, again, and Asher Beirachacha tells you, look at the highest category of Erchin, just like Erchin is 50 Sela, so too Hanukah is 50 Sela as well. So Bishlam, the Rabbi Meir, according to Shabbos, I said, this is our three-way machlokes. So again, let's just go through it again. Rabbi Meir, total Hanukah, 15 Sela. 15 Sela, 5 from each category. 5 from sheep, 5 from grain, 5 from wine. What's the flexibility you have? You could give a little more or a little less from every category, as long as you're giving from every category, and the total is 15. Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Huda, 30. 30 slaim. Ultimately, again, he learns it out from the case of goring of the Eved. Rabbi Shimon, 50 slaim. He learns it out ultimately from the highest level of Erchin. That's our machlokes. So Bishlam Rabbi Meir. So it makes this right, Rabbi Meir. Hainu dichsev tzon goren v'yakev. So according to Rabbi Meir, we have to give from every category. I understand why the Torah says that Hanukah comes from every category, because according to Rabbi Meir, you give from every category. El Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon, Hayt tzon v'goren v'yakev lamli. So both say here's also the fundamental difference. According to Rabbi Meir, Hanukah has to come from all three categories. According to Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon, what's Hanukah? It's a dollar amount. It's a dollar amount. It's 30 slime. It's 50 slime. It could be cash. It could be anything you want. So according to them, why does the pasuk say to give your eved from your grain, from your sheep, and from your wine? So the Gemara says, "Haimi baile l'chidisanya yachalo yehumanikin elamison gorn v'yakev." You might have thought that you could only give the eved literally again from sheep, from grain, and from wine. Minayin l'rabos kol davar. How do you know that Hanukah can be given from anything? The pasuk says, "From that which Hashem will bless you." The goren v'yakev. If that's the case, then why does the pasuk say sheep, right, threshing floor, and wine? To teach you about something very interesting. What's the common denominator between sheep, grain, and wine? Ultimately, again, they're all in the category of bracha. We'll say, what does this mean? They all grow. They all grow, right? Sheep reproduce. Grain grows from the ground. Right? Grapes grow from the ground. So they all reproduce. So the Gemara says, so therefore, again, af kol shesh na bracha. So to Hanukah could come from anything which has the ability to reproduce. What does this come to exclude? Yatsu ksafim div Rabbi Shimon. So what Rabbi Shimon says it comes to exclude? Cash. Cash. Ultimately, again, because cash cannot reproduce. Cash cannot reproduce. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer Yatzu Prados comes to exclude mules. Right? Mules are sterile; they can't reproduce. Rabbi Shimon Prados Mishabcha Megufay. So Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Rabbi Shimon holds that Allah you can't give mules. Why? Because the mule can grow. How does the mule grow? The mule itself could get fatter. Right? The mule itself could get bigger. So because of that, that's called bracha. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Safim Avid Bu Iska. Money could also grow. You invest it. You invest it, you could do business with it, right? So because that money has the ability to grow as well. Fine. Utzricha. Well, I need all of these categories. Why? Because of Rachmanat Son, Hava Amina Bali Chaim in Gidule Karkalo. Had the Torah just said Son, I might have thought Hanukah could only come from livestock. but not from produce. So the Gemara says, so Kasav Rachmana Goren, therefore the Torah writes threshing floor. Because of Rachmana Goren, had the Torah just written threshing floor, Hava Mina, I would have thought Giduli Karka in Bali Chaim, though only produce, but not livestock. Because of Rachmana Tzon, therefore the Torah writes sheep as well. Yakev Lamali, but why do I need wine press? So the Gemara will say Amud Beis, it's Amud Beis. So the Gemara said Lamar Lemi Ute Ksafim. So we'll say this is where the exclusion comes. So according to one opinion, it comes to exclude cash. Lamar Lemi Ute Prados. And according to the other opinion, ultimately again, it comes to exclude mules. Shabbos says, so this is our fundamental three-way machlokes as to how you pay out Hanukkah. Tan Rabbanan, suppose let's go weiter. Pasuk says you have to give Hanukkah. Suppose it's very, remember, the way the Pasuk is phrased is, Hanik Tanik Lo, this is the Pasuk, give him Hanukkah, right? Give him Hanukkah, mitzoncha, migarncha, miyukvecha. Ultimately, again, from his sheep, ultimately again from your granary and from your winepress. From that which Hashem blessed you, you should give him. We'll say, by the way, just very quickly, the lashon of ha'anaka is a very interesting lashon as well. What does it mean ha'anaka? So we'll say, so if you think about it again, what does the word anak mean? What does the word anak mean? Giant. Right? Hanukkah also, again, same shorish, by the way, as lahanik, to nurse. To nurse. So what's interesting about this is, as I will say, when a person ultimately, again, is an eved, right? What is the most dangerous part of being an eved? The most dangerous part of being an eved is a person lacks a sense of confidence about the ability to accomplish things on their own. Because remember, again, an eved is fully reliant, and as such, an eved ivri is fully taken care of, right? The master has to take care of his every single need. On one hand, it sounds nice. On the other hand, what it could totally do is erode one's sense of confidence in their own ability to accomplish. So what is the master's obligation when the eved goes free? Ha'anik taniklo. Make him feel great. Nurse him back to self-reliance. Help him believe in himself. Give him this startup capital for this next chapter in life and make him see that he has the ability to accomplish great things as well. And I will say sometimes the greatest thing you could do for someone is not something you give them, but rather endow them with the confidence and the ability to believe in themselves. That's the whole chap of Hanukkah. Hanik Tanik Lo, make him a giant. Nurse him back to self-reliance. Help him understand that although he has been fully and wholly dependent on you for the last 6 years, he has the ability to accomplish great things in life on his own. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: Yochol nisparich ba'is biglolo ma'anikim lo. You might have thought, Rabbi, because lashon of the pasuk is Ashaberacha Hashem Elokecha. So you might have thought that maybe the only time you're obligated to give Hanukkah is when? Is if halacha l'maisa, the home was blessed because of him. Right? In other words, only if you experienced some type of benefit with the presence of the Eved Ivri that you're obligated to give him Hanukkah. Right? Lo nisparich ba'is biglolo. But if literally the home wasn't blessed, because in other words, I didn't encounter any specific bounty, maybe ein ma'anikim lo, I'm not obligated to give Hanukkah. Talmud Lomar Hanik Tanik Mikol Makom. Therefore, the pasuk says, no, Hanik Tanik, you have to give Hanukkah. So whether you ever did a good job, didn't do a good job, right? You experienced blessing, you didn't experience blessing, you have to give him Hanukkah. Im Kema Talmud Lomar Shabei Rachacha. So I'll say, if that's the case, then why does the pasuk say the phrase, give it Hanik Tanik Lo, right, from everything that Hashem blessed you with, Hakol Lefi Bracha Tein Lo. We'll say what it does mean is, although there is a standard amount of Hanukkah that is obligatory, again, three machlokes as to what that is, but there's a standard amount of Hanukkah. If Baruch Hashem, this Eved was very good to you, and ultimately you did experience an incredible amount of bounty, then what? Pay him accordingly. In other words, if you really benefit from him, although there's a floor that you're obligated, share the bracha that you received as a result of him with him. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Dvarim Kichsavan. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah disagrees. He says, no, the pasuk is as it is written, namely, Misparich Ba'is Biglalo Manikim Lo. If the Eved did such a great job, and therefore the house experienced bounty, give him bracha, give him Hanukkah. So the Gemara says, Elo nisbarach habayis biglalo. But if at the end of the day the home did not experience bracha because of him, then there is no obligation of Hanukkah. Im kain, ma Talmud lomar hanik tanik. So why does the Torah say ultimately the notion of hanik tanik, which sounds just like a blanket rule? You have to give hanaka. Debra Torah kalash shamanei adam. Torah is just using colloquial expression. Shabbat say so an incredible machlokes. Shabbat say so we have two machlokes so far. Machlokes number one is how much hanaka. Machlokes number two, Shabbat say is hanaka automatically given or is hanaka earned? Isn't that fascinating? Right? So two opinions. One opinion says you always give him hanaka, but if the house experienced incredible bracha, give him extra. Second opinion, no. He only gets hanaka if his efforts mamish brought bracha to the household. But if they didn't, no hanaka for him. Incredible. We'll see again. We'll see the resolution to all of this. Tanabanon. Eved Ivri, Oved es haben, ve'eno Oved es habas. What's an interesting halacha? Eved Ivri. So we'll say Eved Ivri. So first of all, I'll say, I will tell you, the way we paskin over here, which is last piece of Hanaka, is halacha l'maisa. Hanaka is a standard obligation, right? And a master is always obligated to give his Eved Hanaka. The Eved did a great job, didn't do a great job. There was bracha, there wasn't bracha. Eved gets Hanaka. That being said, the Rambam says that if the Eved did a fantastic job and the home experienced incredible bracha as a result, it is good for the master to give him extra, reflective of that additional bracha he brought to the home. Good. So it's on Eved Ivri, Oved es haben ve'eno Oved es habas. What's an Eved Ivri? If the master dies, ultimately, again, he serves the son of the master, but not the daughter. Look at Rashi, the last white line in Rashi. Oved es haben, Eved Ivri, Oved es haben. Imes Adonav, Oved es bino, ad malos sheisho ad hayovel hapogeh b'socham. So again, you have an Eved Ivri, the master dies. If the master dies, the Eved serves the son, but he does not serve the daughter. Ama Ivriya, on the other hand, Ama Ivriya, she doesn't serve, right? If her master dies, she neither serves the master, she neither serves the son nor the daughter. Hanirtza v'nimkala oved kochavim. Let's say, what if an Eved is pierced, right? Or an Eved sold to a Gentile master? Eino oved lo asaben v'lo asabas. He doesn't serve the son or the daughter if his master dies. So let's analyze this. Omer Mar, Eved Ivri Oved es haben. So how do we know that if you have an Eved Ivri, the master dies, that the Eved Ivri ultimately serves the son of the master, ve'en Oved es habas, but doesn't serve the daughter? Where do we know this from? Tan Rabbanon, va'avducha sheish shanim. The pasuk says that the Eved will serve you for 6 years. L'cha v'lo liyoresh. What do we see from here? That the Eved Ivri serves the master and not he who inherits the master. That if the master dies, the Eved Ivri doesn't serve the inheritor. So now the Gemara is using over here, in context over here, Yoresh means someone who is inheriting the deceased master who's not the son. Maybe it comes to teach me that the Eved only serves the master and doesn't serve the son if the father dies. Kishomer, when the pasuk says Sheish Shanim Yavod Hari Leben. So Hari Leben Amar. And the pasuk says that the servant will serve, the Eved will serve the master for 6 years. That comes to include the son. That if the father dies, the Eved serves the son. But interestingly enough, if the father dies and there is no son, so someone else inherits. I shouldn't say it's the father, right? That someone else inherits the master. The servant doesn't serve that inheritor. So the Gemara says, Sheish Shanim Yavod Hari Ben Amar Hamani Mekayim va'avdecha Sheish Shanim L'cha v'lo liyoresh. Ultimately, the pasuk come to teach us that when the master dies, if there is a son, Einachinami, the servant will serve the son. But if there is no son and someone else is inheriting the master, the Eved need not serve that second master. Maros, so how do you know to include the son and exclude the brother? The Gemara is using the example of a brother as a non-son inheritor. So Mar ben Yasaben shekein kam tachas aviv liyada ulesteachuza. Because remember again, if a father has an Amma Ivriya, as we saw that before, there is a mitzvah to marry your Amma Ivriya. If the father doesn't want to marry her, there's a mitzvah upon the son. So you see that the son stands in for his father. Similarly, if the father sells ancestral land, the son has the ability to redeem it. So we see that the son has the ability to stand in for the father with certain critical things. So too, when the father dies, the Eved Ivri continues to serve the son. Adarabba, I can see just the opposite. Remember again, I can say this brother should stand in the place of the deceased master. Why? Because also remember again, the surviving brother has a mitzvah of yibum, right? And in that case, remember yibum is an extension of the first marriage. Teresa says 1 second. Klum yesh yibum el b'makom shein bo ben. Remember again, when does yibum exist? Yibum only exists when there is no son. So you see from here that a son has a higher standing than a brother. Ha-yesh ben ein yibum. Elataima di'ika ha-pircha. So we'll say the only reason is because you have that pircha. Ha-lav hachi ach adif. Were it not for this pircha, I will say, I would have said that a brother has a higher standing than a son. The seifuk leid hachatarti v'hachachada, but say that a son has two heightened levels. In other words, the son of Osai, the son number one, stands in for his father, ultimately for Yud, marrying the Amariya, and number two, for Steachuza. A brother only has one for Yibum. I'm sorry. So Steachuza nami mehai pircha hu de kanafkale latana. Klum yesh yibum ela b'makom she'in ben. Because Rabbi say Steachuz itself is actually learned out from this pircha as well. So therefore, Rabbi say this is the first section. This first section, what comes out over here is that if you have an Eved Ivri, right, you have an Eved Ivri, and the master dies, so halacha l'mais, what the Gemara has just proven is the Eved Ivri will now serve the son, but only if there is a son inheritor. If there is no son, and therefore the estate of the deceased master is inherited by his brother, the Eved Ivri ultimately, again, or if there are daughters for that matter, the Eved Ivri goes free. The Eved Ivri does not serve anyone other than his master's son. Next, Amma Ivriya does not go ahead and serve anyone. So the master dies, she doesn't serve the son of the master or the daughter of the master. I mean, how do you mean? Where do we know this from? So Amar Pidad, Amar Kra, V'afla amascha ta'asekain. So Rabbi says, so too for your maidservant, you shall do this. So what does this mean? I will say, Hikisha kosav lenirtza. The Torah compares Amma Ivriya to the Eved whose ear is pierced. Manirtza eno obei lo asaben v'lo asabas. But say, just like the pierced Eved, if his master dies, he goes free and he doesn't serve the son of the daughter of the master. So af Amma Ivriya eno obedes lo asaben v'lo asabas. So too again, Amma Ivriya does not serve the son of the daughter. So the fact that the Torah compares her to the nirtza indicates that she does not serve anyone else. Is that what I need that phrase for? I need it for something else. The afla amascha tasekin. I will say first wide line. Lahanik at lahanik. I will say that phrase afla amascha tasekin actually comes to teach me hanaka. Hanaka, that an amma is entitled to hanaka as well. Ata omer lahanik o eno el l'ritzia. I'll say, but maybe you're saying it's for hanaka. Maybe it's come to teach me that she's also subject to piercing. Kishu omer vim omer yomar ha'aved v'lo amma ivriya. Hari ritzia omer. So we'll say no. By ritzia, by the piercing, it dafka says if the eved says I want to stay. We learn out from there that only an eved could be pierced. An amma is never pierced. So the Gemara says, so what does it mean when it says va'afla mascha, so too for your maidservant? Laha'anik teaches us that an amma is entitled to hanaka. Imke nichtov pra la'amascha. That's the case. The pasuk could have just said to your maidservant. So Cain, so the Gemara says, Imke nichtov pra la'amascha Cain. Ma tase. Why does it have to add in the extra word tase? So the Gemara answers, Shamas mina tarti comes to teach us two things. I will say, so what are the two things we learn out from this phrase? The af la'amascha ta'asekein, or right, what do we learn out? Number one, I will say that an amma is entitled to ha'anaka. And number three, what else do we learn? Number two, what else do we learn? That ultimately, again, that pasuk is comparing her to a nirtza, and to teach me that just with a nirtza, pierced evet, if his master dies, he goes free. He doesn't serve anyone else. So too by an amma, if her master dies, she doesn't serve the son or the daughter of the master. So we've now successfully gone through two of the categories. So number one, Eved Ivri, if his master dies, if there's a son, he serves the son, doesn't serve anyone else. Amma Ivriya is compared to a nirtza, and if her master dies, ultimately again, she does not serve anyone else. Right, we'll stop over here for today, and Meretz Hashem will pick up with the new sugya. Well, we still have the third category, right? The third category is Nirtza and Ninkar La'Obed Kochavim, and Meretz Hashem to be continued tomorrow. Bosai, what a daf. Shkoyach. All right, Chai Ranzum, have a great day, everyone.